Good evening, Robert and Gert. Thank you so much for your time before. It was a real pleasure to meet you both. Now, I thought I'd make you a very quick video, as we discussed, outlining kind of how we've designed Education Perfect aligned to the Australian curriculum. So what we have here is this is actually the landing page as a teacher that you get when you log in. And what you can do is you can go into the content library here, and I'll create you both accounts so you can have a bit of an explore within here as well. Now, within science, to show you an example, this is the New South Wales syllabus. We've got our general kind of science courses. And then within here, we have our content explicitly aligned to the Australian curriculum. So if I was to have a look at the Year 9 Australian curriculum here, and have a look at, for example, the one I was talking about, communication with waves. So within communication with waves in the Australian curriculum, it kind of just talks about how energy is transferred through waves and particles. And so this can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So we have our communication with waves, which is looking specific at waves. So for example, the internet, cell phones, radio waves, X-rays, radar. But then we also have our content on electricity, our content on heat, our content on light, and our content on sound. So if I was to show you, for example, electricity, we've arranged our folders like this. So the revision content teaches students things that they should have known from the previous Australian curriculum. And so every time you get to one of these light bulbs here, it's a lesson. So these light bulbs will show the lesson. The teacher can quite easily preview the lesson. So if we were to have a look at this introduction lesson to electricity. So I can preview this smart lesson. Now this lesson at the moment has been completed by about 6,700 students. They've rated it 3.9 stars out of 5, and it's taken the 80th percentile of those students 20 minutes to complete. So that's the information the teacher has, and basically the teacher can preview the lesson quite easily. We've kind of given just a few sentences an appropriate image to introduce the ideas to students. They have to view each slide for at least 3 seconds, and then they can continue through. So as a teacher, you can quite easily preview this lesson, and then it will go to a question section. So within this question section, we have aligned all of our question sections to Bloom's taxonomy, so the teacher can quite easily see what level of thinking that's required. And the students work through each of these question sections, and they need to get a certain amount correct in order to continue. And then it goes into a little bit more information here. So the yellow sections are information, the purple sections are question sections, and then when we go into this blue section here, this is actually a long answer question. So it's asking the students to describe the structure of an atom and explain why 2 protons repel each other. So the students actually write an answer, then they're given a model answer and keywords as well as an explanation. Now these are actually suitable for peer review, which means a teacher can activate peer review, and then they'll be given, the student will submit their response, be given 3 other students' responses to review anonymously, and then they'll be given those other responses as well. And then they'll be asked to self-review again. So it's kind of that learning activity of learning through formative assessment. Then within here, we've got that extra for experts question asking them to research, and then some summary slides stating the learning outcomes and then explaining those. So within year 7 to 10, we have, I think it's about 800 lessons, and these go through all the different units within the Australian curriculum. So we've got a number of topics in there and a number of resources as well. We also have our science skills that go through scientific method, and we have our science investigation guide, which goes through that in more detail. As well as that, we do have labs scattered throughout. So, for example, if we were to have a look at chemical reactions, here are our science investigations. And these are actually guided investigations for the students complete with complemented teacher guides that go through the purpose, the aim, the background information, pre-prac questions and answers, materials and methods, experimental results, everything like that. So within this, you can see that's just an example using science, but we have resources for maths, geography, English, history, and our languages, of course, as well. And we've started building out our digital technologies as well. So all of these resources can be used as tasks. So teachers can assign a task to their class. They can choose their class, They can choose what they'd like to assign from that library. So if we were to go into New South Wales Stage 4, we could go into Earth and Space, into Earth, Moon and Sun, and we could choose this lesson on time zones and seasons. That will be assigned to the students to complete. They can choose when it will be assigned. There's the live feed and there's Dash as well, which is a game. Now, I'll show you what the live feed looks like within this sample report. So essentially, as a student completes the lesson, the teacher's aware of who's finished the lesson, who hasn't, if any students were having difficulty. So because as the students complete the lesson, if they get something incorrect, they're shown the correct answer and why. So every student should finish a lesson. If they don't, that's a bit of an issue. So they can go in and quite easily see if they're understanding those core concepts. And I suppose the fundamental ideas behind this program is that some of this content can be used in a flipped learning approach. So more time is freed up within the class for teachers to really challenge students creatively and to go to that higher level of thinking. So we've really tried to cover that core content that's required within science, maths, and English, for example. We've got a lot of language conventions and spelling lists and reading comprehension, skills style lessons, so that they have that core understanding, so that next level is able to be reached within class time when you've got that teacher-student relationship developing. Within the responses area here as well, a teacher can go in and have a look at the students' written responses. We've got the student answer, the model answer, and they can actually leave feedback for the students and they can see how they've improved as well. So if we were to have a look at a different student, here's Chris, or here's Piers. Now that's kind of how the tasks and homework area work, but I suppose within the content library it might be easier if I just create you both an account using the email that I received from you, and you can go and have a look in maths. And for example, if we were to have a look at Pythagoras, within Pythagoras we have all of our different lessons here. One component of the maths platform is we do have this working formula that gives the students line by line feedback and also an explanation. It'll give them feedback as they're working their way through it as well. Within English, for example, we have our wide reading library, lots of language conventions. We have our diagnostic assessments to help with language conventions and reading comprehension. I suppose the other side of it is teachers can go in and actually arrange the content however they'd like to. And so I suppose that's how a few schools are currently using it, because they're using our resources and creating a folder structure that works for them. So that's just a very brief introduction, but I think it would probably be best if I create you both accounts and you can really have a look through that content library in more detail. The only other part of the program that's quite useful to know about is our assessment area. This is used a lot by teachers for formative assessments as well as components of summative assessments. So you can create quick tests very easily from existing content. You can use our pre-built assessments on language conventions, reading comprehension, maths, algebra, the different pre-tests for each year level, or you can actually create your own. And essentially all of these are automatically marked. So if we were to have a look at, for example, a language conventions pre-test, we can see how each student has gone. So if we were to have a look at Brad here, when Brad submits, he sees his strengths and his next steps, and those are actually links to lessons that will help Brad fill those gaps in understanding. All of these are lessons that will help him. And as a teacher, you can quite clearly see how the whole class has gone in terms of these analysis areas. So if the class is really struggling with adverbs, you can see that very clearly and start to direct your teaching in that area. So there's kind of those learning mode and there's the assessment mode to use our content in different ways. And we've tried to design our content to be nice and discreet so that it can be used however is most useful for the teacher, basically. Our kind of core guiding principles are we just want to empower teachers to do what they love to do and to challenge students and create wonderful creative thinkers for the future. So that's a little bit of a spiel about us. Any questions, please let me know, and thanks again for your time before. Bye.